Top 10 cards that you're going to want to find yourself picking up for the Kshatri-La coming out early in 2023. Make sure you guys smash the living crap out of that subscribe button so you guys don't miss out more Oz content. Number one on our list here is going to be Psybeast. Now you're like, really? Psybeast, that old card from Extreme Victory? Yes. So I've mentioned this previously before, but this card's amazing. You can't actually E-Tele it out to trigger its effect because it's locked behind a normal summon, but on normal summon, you can remove from play one psychic monster from your deck. This card's level becomes the level of that monster. Well, the Kshatri-La or the Kshatri-Las end up actually having, you know, special summon clauses on them, but you need ways to kind of walk around that. Well, this also fuels up your banish zone, which is going to be very, very important for you for some of your key monster reborn clauses within the deck to revive from either graveyard or banish. But deck thinning, setting up a piece that you need for mid combo extension, or using something like this to bait a possible hand trap along the way is going to be very, very important for a deck like this. So do not underestimate a good card like this. Next up, we are going to have the Sacred Sword of the Seven Stars. Now, I'm only mentioning this for really the original rarity, but this is something that you might want to mess around with. For our earlier build, what we're doing with this right now is it's actually been pretty good in terms of testing. But you banish a level 7 monster from your hand or face up on the field to draw 2 cards. Now, this is locked behind a once per turn clause. You might not particularly like that, but we found in terms of testing that while this card might be unsearchable, it definitely facilitates some of like the combo advantage that you need. You know, you always talk about like needing to draw further into the deck to get to certain cards. We might shave this down to maybe a 1 to 2 of, but from where I'm sitting right now, this card has genuinely been relatively good. It's also not like if you have too many level 7s in your hand, you need to unclog because you can't do like proper special summon clauses. I do think that this is a pretty good start for the deck. All right. Next up is going to be good old Dimension Shifter. Who doesn't love the fact that your deck is already a walking, talking macro Cosmo already? So why would you not play the hand trap that acts as that? All right. Just go ahead and no cards in graveyard. Okay, hey man, just turn on a free walking, talking macro. The big thing with this archetype that really makes this deck like scary is the fact that everything that it does facilitates like taking up zones, taking away, the graveyard, for example, with the big guy. I think it's very important to kind of understand what you can do with, just the little combo pieces with this. So the fact that your deck doesn't really give 2 craps about the graveyard per se, giving you access to something like a turn 1 macro Cosmo so that you can start your deck effectively, and by start your deck I mean start combo, is pretty good. You gotta love little harmonizing options. Next up here, we're going to get into the extra deck resources here, is number 89, Diabolsis, the Mind Hacker. Once per turn, detach one material from this card, look at your opponent's extra deck, and banish 1 monster from it face down. Okay, well that's always going to be amazing. Sure, so we get spot removal options from the opponent's extra deck. At the end of the battle phase, if this card destroyed a monster by batting, target 1 card in your opponent's graveyard, banish it face down. Sure. If a card your opponent owns and possesses is banished face down, while you control this card except during damage step, you can banish cards on the top of your opponent's deck face down equal to their face down banish cards. Now, if your opponent wants to be cool and activate the Pot of Extravagance while this is up, you're going to get a free banish 6 on your opponent. Is this card amazing? Does it facilitate like play lines? I think this card is a resource for the extra deck. We've noticed that the extra deck for this deck isn't particularly tight. You have a lot of room for like different exceed options that you can pick up, and I think that's good. Next up is going to be the Harmonizer Gradle, number 76. You're like, really? So it's 2 level 7s to make it. This card's attribute is also treated as each of its attached materials attributes. Can't be destroyed by battle with a monster with the same attribute, all right, and also cannot be destroyed by the activated effects of monster opponent controls with the same attribute. So there's a lot to take in for that effect, but what we care about is quick effect and target 1 monster in your opponent's graveyard. Detaching material from this card, and if you do, attach that target to this card as material. Now you can only use this effect of Harmonizing Gradle once per turn, but the big thing with that is you can jack some of your opponent's materials that might end up being detrimental pieces, like a tier, for example. You know, your opponent mills off a tier elements, they trigger the effect. You can steal that tier elements from their graveyard, attach it safely under this card, and they won't be able to do anything with it because it's now a material underneath harmonizing. Little things like this make cards like this really good. Next up is Big Eye. Holy moly. 2 level 7s. You guys remember good old Big Eye, right? Once per turn, detach your material from this card. Target one monster your opponent controls. Take control of that monster. Alright? And then Big Eye itself can attack the turn that you activate that effect. Who cares? You have a permanent change of heart here that you can access in extra deck form, which means all you've got to do is just move the opponent's monster on over to your field. Now, does this come up as much as it formerly did in the past? Absolutely not. But this is still going to be one of those cards that I want to give a mention to, because once again, if our extra deck resources aren't necessarily too tight, then we can fit something a little bit more obscure like Big Eye into the deck. That way you can kind of cover your bases a little bit and go, okay, you know, maybe if you want to work in like Pot of Prosperity or something into your build, you know, this might be something that you end up banishing along the way, but you love free resource generation like a card like this. Next up is going to be Red Eye's Flare Metal Dragon. Can be destroyed by card effects while has an exceed material. Well, that's always a bonus. While this card has an exceed material, each time your opponent activates a card or effect, inflict 500 damage to your opponent immediately after it resolves. So what you're telling me here is this is for time. Anything that the opponent does, alright, you just are going to ride them down on the life point meter. Okay, sounds good to me. In the current state of Yu-Gi-Oh!, you need cards that you can effectively use as measure points for life point manipulation. Something like this, your opponent has to play the game or something in order to try to win. Something like this is going to start burning down the clock on them. Is it a fantastic option? No, but it is something that you will definitely get value out of just on that burn clause. Maybe you need to close out a game for something. Maybe your opponent's at 400 life. Now they can't play any cards. Little things to consider. Alright, next up is the World Gears of Thurgical Durumia. 3 level 5 or higher monsters to make this. I've mentioned this card in the past, much like Blackluster Soldier. This thing can't be used as link material. The link summon of this card is unaffected by other monster effects. Alright, so you're like, wait a minute, it's just unaffected by other monster effects? Well, during your main phase, if you control this card that was link summoned using 3 monsters that had 3 different types and attributes on the field, you can destroy all other cards on the field. Now, it is at 3,500. That might not seem too grand to a lot of people here, but an invested board wipe into something if something kind of goes wrong doesn't seem too terrible to me. Once again, you know, I bring up the point that like this extra deck is not that crazy tight in terms of, you know, your option points. All right, and I think the fact that you can mix in some different option routes here to kind of decide which pieces that you want to deal with here is going to be what you're really going to capitalize on here. Next up is Macro Cosmo and Dimensional Fissure. You know, we mentioned Dimensional Shifty Lad earlier in the video, but why would you not want to have the 2 floodgates that kind of make things go round? Now, certain limitations and things do kind of hurt these cards in terms of, you know, their drawability, but I think that's fine, all right, considering the fact that, honestly, I think we do have these in the side deck right now. I was thinking about in terms of testing, like if we'd actually main deck these. I think that they're more so side options. You know, you're already main decking the Dimension Shifter. Your Exceed monster is a walking, talking Macro Cosmo, which is fine as it is, but in terms of everything else that you've already shaped up, I think you pretty much got everything that you need to cover your bases for within the main deck. So having a little bit more banish hate in the extra deck or down on the side deck is fine. And last but not least, I gotta give a shout out here to Darkwing Blast. Law Fenrir and Law Unicorn, the basic beginning bits of this deck are going to come in Darkwing, all right? Like, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is very famous for, taking good support and splitting it across multiple sets here. So Darkwing Blast is going to be something that you're going to need to step on into. You're going to need to be able to make sure that you can get those Kshatri very early cards to make sure that you can build this amazing deck if this is something that you're watching this video getting excited for. So what do you guys think about this list? Please leave a comment down below, tell me what you guys think, and I will see your beautiful faces back here later in the day, guys. Peace out. Patrons, thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.